If you're an undergraduate in this room, you care about your fraternity. You sacrifice your time and lend your talents to making your chapter better. And when you graduate, you'll have the opportunity to participate in the lifetime responsibility of brotherhood and continue to serve Sigma Phi Epsilon. The volunteers in this room have taken that opportunity, and we're here tonight to honor one such brother who has served our fraternity for decades. Tonight, we're here to honor Brother Steve Young. Steve is a graduate of our Kansas Gamma chapter at the University of Kansas. Steve began volunteering when he answered a letter from Grant Treasurer Chris Bittman some 23 years ago. To know Steve is to know that he is a proud, dyed-in-the-wool Jayhawk. But Steve loves Kansas basketball so much that he has sent numerous SigEp regional directors and staff to Lawrence on excursions to visit the famous Fog Allen Fieldhouse and watch his beloved Jayhawks play. And every time he's done that, he's done so on his own dime. Steve started his volunteer journey 23 years ago, jumping in to serve our California-Xi chapter at San Francisco State. And his journey has never stopped. For 9 years, he served as president and secretary of that AVC. And this is when I first met Steve. This was at least 20 years ago. He was the AVC president at Cal-Xi. I was the chapter counselor for my home chapter, Cal-Mu at Cal Poly Pomona. And later, we both had the honor of serving side by side as district governors for Sigma Phi Epsilon, splitting the great state of California in two. We were both working hard to continue to elevate our beloved fraternity, and we're still working hard to do that today. Steve began his tenure as district governor in 2002, and by 2004, every chapter in Steve's district was operating the Balanced Man program. In addition to his work with California-Xi, Steve served on the AVCs at California Theta and California Pi. And right now, he's the president of the California Alpha AVC at UC Berkeley, where he's helped the AVC grow their bank account from a few $1,000 to over $300,000. Brother Mike Ellis calls Steve the super glue that keeps our AVC together. He recruited all of us to serve this board, and he stepped up to lead whenever he was needed. He's become not only our leader, but our dear friend as well. By 2007, Steve was taking part in the decision-making that has affected our whole fraternity. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, Steve's work as the task force chairman brought positive change to our national bylaws and our AVC trust agreement. He was a charter member of the Standing Committee on Volunteers, the group that laid the foundation for the Philip A. Cox Volunteer Institute, and brought the importance of volunteer training to prominence. Steve's professional expertise as an attorney in the insurance industry has made him an invaluable contributor to the SENH Board of Directors. And most recently, Steve played a very prominent role in a task force commissioned by the National Board of Directors to examine our ever-troubling insurance options. Steve's passion for volunteers has manifested itself in so many ways. He knows that the SigEp experience for each of you undergrads isn't possible without the dedication of so many volunteers, many of whom are in this room. In fact, Jim Amon has called Steve Young the volunteer whisperer for his ability to bring together so many volunteers based on the vision and values of our fraternity. He started a district volunteer retreat over a decade ago that continues every year. Whenever a chapter needs him, he spends hours of his time to solve problems and to make SigEp better. But Steve's contributions extend further. He regularly hosts regional directors in his home and then treats them to San Francisco's cultural delights, giving them a welcome relief from the rigors of traveling life. As our brother Adam Sieber said, Steve doesn't just perform his duties, he throws himself into his work with such energy and enthusiasm that he inspires others to come along, to do more. He makes it fun to be a member of SigEp. Steve brings a tremendous wealth of wisdom, strength, and empathy to help others find their way. Steve, Your service to Sigma Phi Epsilon is exemplary. Countless brothers in this room and all over the world can attest to your virtue, your diligence, and your brotherly love. We cannot begin to thank you enough for your lifetime of selfless service. From the bottom of our hearts, we are grateful for your brilliant and humble leadership, always putting us first, never looking for personal recognition or personal gain. Brothers and friends, please join me in honoring our Exemplary Service Award recipient, our brother from our Kansas Gamma chapter at the University of Kansas, who's made such an incredible impact here on the West Coast, Brother Steve Young.
Thank you, brothers, for this really tremendous honor. I am at once very deeply honored as the son and grandson of good Midwesterners. I was taught never to seek and to be very uncomfortable in the spotlight. So I'm itching a little bit at all of these nice comments, especially from a Dodger fan. But it's very humbling for me to be here, not least because of all of the tremendous men that we've heard introduced and whose contributions to our fraternity have been recounted here tonight, but also for the men that I know are in this room in our undergraduate and volunteer ranks that maybe haven't been mentioned but are even more significant. Men like Dr. Shanklin, our former Grand President, who, from my perspective, is one of our most consequential recent Grand Presidents, and who continues to be one of our most important leaders. Men like Dave Calderon, who I think honestly is as beloved as anyone in our entire fraternity, and a man who I think has been one of the absolutely best district governors we've ever had anywhere in the country, but served here in Southern California. Now serves on our national board. Men like Gary Keefe, whose personal generosity to our fraternity is incalculable, has been on display again today. Like Dr. Shanklin, a member of our Order of the Golden Heart, a former Grand President, head of our foundation. And the only thing that may exceed his financial contributions to our fraternity and to its mission is the intellectual capital and his great passion for what we do and who we are. And, you know, I'd like to thank also, for just a moment, our tremendous CEO, Brian Warren. You know, I'll never forget the passion and the emotion that he shared at one of the very first CLAs he attended after he had been named our executive director. His eyes were brimming with emotion as he talked about what he thought SigEp could be and how it could be better and the impact that it and we could have on the world. And it has been amazing to me to see him be able, in an absolutely impossible job, to bring that abiding passion into his Ollinger House office every day of the week. The work, Brian, that you and your staff are doing, the incredible staff that you've hired, the initiatives that you are undertaking with the direction and the leadership of our national board, each one of which is seemingly more vital and also more difficult than the last, already mark you as probably the greatest CEO we have ever had, and you're just getting started. So, and before I leave the subject of Brian Warren, I just want to say this. You know, at lunch today, we heard Brian talk about some of the challenges that we face. And, you know, I think we were all interested, concerned by that. And we gave Brian, you know, a very suitable and attentive, polite round of applause. But I'll tell you, as I know this man, as I know the unbelievable quality and diversity and passion of our professional staff, I would like to invite and ask all of you right now to join me in a rousing standing ovation for Brian Warren and our professional staff. You know, it's always dangerous when you start naming people because there are a million people. Every single table has at least one or maybe two or three or maybe 12 guys that I can and probably should be mentioning. And by guy, I mean both guy and women, who are unbelievably wonderful contributors to Sigma Phi Epsilon. You know, brothers, I've been asked to talk a little bit about what SigEp means to me, why I continue to be involved in these years. And I can just tell you that I absolutely believe in the transformative power of our fraternity to change men's lives for the better, to have an impact that is so significant that it not only prepares all of us, undergraduate and volunteer alike, for happier and more successful lives, but it has this cascading, rippling effect that touches and enriches the lives of every person that we interact with, meet, have the opportunity to work with, have the opportunity to teach, help, and love as we go through our entire lives. You know, my first experience personally with this transformative power, I remember well. It happened early in the morning on an early day in February of 1979. I was standing at the time in the chapter meeting room of our Kansas Gamma chapter house at 17th and Tennessee in Lawrence. I was just there last week, by the way, and I worked my absolute magic watching a game in Allen Fieldhouse where my team lost for the first time in 4 years at home. I was so happy. So I will say to our San Diego State brothers that the one and only good thing about my being there for our loss to Iowa State is that my boss has a couple of sons who went to San Diego State, and they've been lording over me the fact that the Aztecs were the last team to beat KU in Allen Fieldhouse, so at least I don't have to listen to them anymore giving me crap about that. But I was in that chapter meeting room way back in February '79, and we had just completed the Sigma Phi Epsilon ritual of initiation. And I just remember there was this deep feeling that washed over me that morning, a feeling that I'd really never had in my life before that point. It was a feeling of love and acceptance, of validation, and the brotherly love in that room permeated and engulfed every brother in that chapter meeting room. I've never forgotten that. I remember, too, being introduced in that ritual to what at the time seemed to me like a very novel and profound concept. The notion that, you know, back of all of the world's religions, for whatever their differences, there is this fundamental, inherent, unifying truth that they all share, that this world of ours didn't happen by accident. It wasn't just a random scientific chance, that we are all of us here for a reason, and whether we fully realize it or recognize it all the time or not, that really, you know, more than being human beings, we are all of us spiritual beings having a human experience. And I have to confess that although I never forgot this lesson from that early exposure to our ritual, I didn't think a whole lot about it either at the age of 20 or whatever I was at the time, until many years after some intervening life experience convinced me that this power of the Spirit is available, I believe, to every person who humbly seeks it. And I really believe the age of miracles in the human heart and in the SigEp heart is absolutely still with us. Now, before anyone gets too wigged out about this, let me just tell you, I'm just expressing a personal opinion here based on my own experience. And I don't mean to suggest for one moment that SigEp needs to go find religion or start shaking tambourines or anything like that. I'm actually not even talking about religion here. I don't have anything against it, certainly. But one of the enduring strengths of Sigma Phi Epsilon is that we judge men by the content of their character, as Gary Keefe mentioned, not by their race or their color, their creed, their national origin, sexual orientation, and certainly not by their religion of choice, or for that matter, lack thereof. But I do mean to suggest, and I do believe, that with our magnificent ritual as our guide, that there is nothing that we SigEps cannot do. There is no obstacle, no difficulty too daunting for us to overcome working together. Now, I'd like to tell you about another experience, a radically different type of experience in my early days at Kansas Gamma that also really influenced my belief in and my commitment to SigEp. It happens that our chapter back then had landed as a pledge, as a new pledge, this junior upperclassman. He'd been a real hotshot on campus. He was like the editor of the college paper. He had been in the student senate. He was in the marching band. He had a 4.0 grade point average. He really thought himself kind of secretly smarter than most everyone else around him, and he was really quite convinced that he was destined, because of his inherent great leadership abilities, to be, a profound leader of men. And sure enough, right after his initiation, he was chosen by his chapter to be the vice president of membership development, although in those days we called it Brotherhood Development Coordinator, which was the title we gave it after we decided that pledge trainer lacked a certain elegance. Now, in those days, the Balanced Band program had not yet been really conceived or implemented, so every chapter was operating on the pledge model. And our new, just incredibly talented vice president of membership development decided that this pledge program stuff was just really completely archaic, needed to be overhauled, so he set out all by himself to fashion this very detailed, wonderful new development program in which responsibilities and the privileges of membership would be more equally shared between pledges and actives. Now, you probably already know that this guy who thought so well of himself was me, right? And you can probably also guess what the heck happened with this new pledge program, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I can confirm to you that it was a complete disaster. It was awful. Nobody liked it. The pledges were up in arms. The actives were in open rebellion in this chapter. It is probably amazing that I was not burned at the stake and denounced as a witch or something in those days. Fortunately, they weren't doing that in Kansas then. I think they are in some parts now, but that's a different issue. This was a SIG epic fail. It really was. It was amazing. I can tell you, though, that I learned more from that experience about leadership. I learned more about that experience, from that experience, about brotherly love, than all of these successes that I might have enjoyed or contributed to up to that point in my life. And among other things, I learned that, leadership really is not just telling other people what to do. That may work in the military, it may work in other organizations where there's a hierarchy of top-down, but it sure doesn't work very well with fraternity men, right? I mean, when somebody tells us what to do, we dudes all have a pretty good and normal reaction to that, which is, you, right? And the more charismatic members of our chapters will usually do just the opposite, just to sort of show you, right? So, effective leadership requires a whole lot more, and I'm going to come back to that in just one second. But I've seen so many examples of other Sigma Phi Epsilon members, undergraduates and volunteers alike, having these same epiphanies, these same experiences, these same transformations, just like the ones I had, that they all, and we all, emerged from this fraternity experience dramatically better men for having had it. Brothers, I really believe, and I know that I'm confident that every person in this room shares this conviction, but I believe that this world of ours needs Sigma Phi Epsilon now more than ever. You know, the American college fraternity system faces these existential threats that are far greater than anything I think we've ever had to confront today. Brian spoke of this very eloquently in our lunch today about the proximity and the severity of these absolutely mortal threats. There is just really and simply no guarantee that the fraternity system or the SigEp will necessarily be here when your sons reach college age. But you know, I really think that our founders kind of understood all these dynamics. I believe that our ritual points the way not only for the success of our chapters, but for the success that all of us can have in our personal lives as SigEps, with virtue, diligence, and brotherly love as our guide stars. You know, it's by living our values, not just talking about them. It's about not giving up, even when the odds and the opposition seems really stacked up against us. And it's by responding to hatred to love, to ignorance with truth. As St. Francis of Assisi said so famously, it's by self-forgetting that one finds. And in the maxim that's even older and more familiar, to give is to receive. And for me, brothers, that's really what SigEp is all about. By my calculation, the ledger is heavily skewed in my favor. For whatever I may have been able to contribute along the way, I know that I have received exponentially more in return. And the one piece of good news I can share with you is this bargain, the benefit of this bargain, in my experience, is available to every single member of Sigma Phi Epsilon, undergraduate and volunteer alike. So as we confront all these challenges, you know, we need to ask all of ourselves this question. If we Sigma Phi Epsilons do not lead this effort, if we are not prepared to take bold and decisive action, who will? And I think we know the answer is that probably no one will, at least no one will do it as well and as effectively as we can. I want to share with you just a few thoughts in closing on what I view as the vital imperative of your leadership as you return to your campuses and the vital urgency of now. I can tell you, brothers, truly, I stand in deep humility before you. You are SigEp. It is you who will write the future of our fraternity. But you're not just SigEp. You are the very best and the very brightest in our undergraduate and volunteer ranks. Many men have come before us all in the years gone by to blaze the trail that we all now walk very comfortably, arm in arm with our brothers. But really, it is now upon your shoulders as you depart this CLA and return to your campuses, upon whom the question now rests, will our fraternity be here in the years to be? What actions can you take? What actions are you prepared to take to ensure our continued survival and prosperity? Now, look, I don't have a blueprint for that. I'm confident we have a lot of really smart people on our board and an incredibly talented staff who can marshal the resources and give us the tools that we all of us need to bring this brighter future to ourselves and to our men. And even if I did have the answer, I wouldn't tell you, because like I said before, you can't tell fraternity guys to do anything, right? But I would respectfully submit to you that our path begins with a vision, with an inspiration and a sacred commitment to one another, not to take the easy way out and not to merely accept the status quo, no matter how good it may be on your campuses, but instead to dream about what can be. We have to become, we must become indispensable partners to and not distractions from the educational missions of our host institutions. We just can't any longer be content with being part of a system that for too many men is little more than a glorified drinking club. We can't continue to turn a blind eye to underage drinking. You know, we can't be an activity that produces its primary value just to men in their very first year or so of college when they need help jumping that gap from boyhood, leaving home to college for the first time. We must strive to retain our upperclassmen and continue to develop opportunities and programming of material significance to them. We have to be zealous advocates for women and for all guests to our chapter houses, ensuring that they're treated always with the utmost in consideration and respect. We have to remain, of course, focused on the primary purpose of our college years, which is our own personal academic achievement, but, you know, at the same time, I think it's also incumbent upon us to recognize, and I know I'm certainly grateful for this, all of the enormous gifts that have been dropped, really mostly completely undeserved, into my lap. This opportunity to live as free people in the greatest democracy our world has ever known, of having, not in my case perhaps, but in yours, having your youth, having your health, having the privileges that flow from higher education, and especially, you know, the opportunity to learn, to grow, to matriculate in a brotherhood of love and support, and to recognize that because of all these gifts we've received, we have a duty and we have an opportunity to help those who are less fortunate. I can't tell you exactly how you will get here, but I hope you agree with me that we need to leave this Carlson Leadership Academy resolved not only to be better by our own high standards, but to also to be so darn good that every other fraternity has to emulate us if they want to survive. We got to be so darn good that every single sorority wants to date us. We got to be so essential to the success of the educational mission at our host universities. Every college president understands he or she must have a SigEp chapter on their campus. And brothers, I don't think any of these goals are mutually exclusive. I think they align with each other perfectly. With this vision comes the opportunity, really, of a generation. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you, our undergraduate leaders, to mobilize our brotherhood, the greatest fraternity our nation's ever known, to assemble men of goodwill, not only within our chapters, but in other organizations, on your campuses and in your communities, and with our ritual as our guide, to do nothing less than painstakingly reshape the entire fraternity system and recast its role in the life and experience of our colleges and universities, one Sigma Phi Epsilon chapter at a time. Look, all of us, we commend this task to you, knowing full well, it's easy to say, but this is not going to be easy. As my boss is fond of saying, look, if this stuff were easy, they wouldn't need us, right? But I can tell you two things. One, it gives me great joy and great hope for our fraternity to know our undergraduate men. It is my tremendous privilege to work on the AVC of our California Alpha chapter. And our brothers are sitting here in front of me. And I'll tell you, every single man I've met in that chapter is a scholar, they are an athlete, they are a gentleman, they are dedicated and unified to improve not only themselves, but their chapters. And when I have attended at their invitation, their chapter meetings, and I see the camaraderie, the warmth, the unity, the love that they have for each other, the racial diversity, the other mixes in that chapter, it really gives me great, great hope for our fraternity and for our world as well. So the challenge of our time, the glorious opportunity that I think it presents all of you at this moment, is best captured in one of my favorite Latin expressions. I've lived in California and in San Francisco for 30 years. It is my home. But as Dave indicated, I have deep roots in Douglas County, at least, Kansas. One of the few blue counties in Kansas, but that's a separate issue. It happens to be the state motto of Kansas, and maybe you've heard this Latin expression, but it is ad astra per aspera. And what it means is to the stars through difficulty. Brothers, again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this tremendous award. May God bless all of you, and may God bless our fraternity. Thank you.